Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to begin the memorial service for Frederick M. Skeer. Cantor Michelle Drucker-Friedman will be officiating. The interment was held at Old Montefiore Cemetery in Springfield Gardens, New York on May 14th, and this is the memorial service portion Fred wanted. So for those of you who are here, thank you for your attendance. Please be sure that your cell phones have been turned off. Welcome those of you joining us via live stream.
Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit our loved one, our Fred, gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished with time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of their light and their warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage and, in the fullness of time, healing and peace. Shiviti Adonai l'nei tamid, kimimini b'lemot. לכן שמח ליבי ויגל כבודי, אף בשרי ישכון לבטח, כי לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול, לא תיתן חסדך לראות שחר, תודיעני אור החיים. אור החיים, סובה שמחות את פניך, נעמוד במין הנצח. שביתי אדוני לנגד תמיד, כי ממני בלמוד. And the child asked, "Tell me of life." And the sage answered, "Life, my child, is a mystery. We don't ask to be born, nor do we even understand the meaning of birth, of creation. We grow and we experience life's pleasures and pains. We love, and slowly, oh, so slowly, we become to realize that we have become, that we are. At that moment, we humble ourselves before the mystery of life and quietly say, though I knew not, I have been granted the most precious of all gifts, the gift of life." And the child asked, "Tell me of death." And the sage answered, "Death, my child, is a mystery. It is the inevitable return of the gift of life, the gift which came free to us. We live as the trustee of that mysterious being, of that inexplicable becoming. Yes, you and I are but the trustees of life. We nurture it, we delight in it, we give of it to others, and at the appointed time, we sadly, yet with pride, return it from whence it came. The beauty of my child is that what we are, what we have become, remains long after the gift has been returned. It remains as a precious keepsake with our loved ones who live on. Our angels spend much time sleeping. In their dreams, they tear down the new houses by the sea and build old ones in their place. No matter how long they sleep, 100, 200 years, 10 centuries is not too much. The first to wake up takes the torch that has been handed down, adds a drop of oil to the lamp, blesses the eternal light, and then recalls the name of every other angel. And one by one, they are remembered, and they wake up. For them, as for us, there is nothing more beautiful than memory. In just a moment, I'm going to have you turn to these memorial packets that you might have gotten by the front door, and we'll be looking in just a second at the 23rd Psalm. Adonai roi lo echsar behindo tashan yibartseni al menuchot enachal leini. The translation, read with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He lead me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He lead me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, to hope, dream, to be, and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life is lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. Our beloved Fred, who called me Cantor Shelley darling, will be remembered by Susan Ginsburg, by Max Fabian, and then by his son, Ken Spear. Susan and Max.
Really gonna have to get her up here.
Yeah. Okay. You want to start, Max?
Yeah, I can start.
Okay.
So Fred and I got close in 2020. I reached out thinking he might need some help with groceries and medications, things like that. I knew we were related immediately because his grocery list was lox, bagels, and the largest gin bottle possible.
And vermouth and olives.
And vermouth and olives.
Don't forget the vermouth and olives.
Yes, exactly. And over the past few years, we became extremely close. My wife and Casey would go over to Carol and Fred's, and we'd sit and we'd talk. We'd listen to stories, and Fred would, always have us pick up food from his favorite restaurants, always on him, he insisted. And, I thought he was reading off the list of food that they had at the restaurant, but it always turned out it was his actual order, which caught me off guard, because he loved to eat. He loved to eat, and he loved to be together with friends, and he loved to share that joy and that passion. He was a man who knew how to enjoy his life.
Yes, he did.
He surely was a schmoozer, and he knew how to make anyone feel special and relaxed. And I remember there was one in particular story where Casey and I, my wife, had just come back from Vietnam. And Fred's first reaction was, "Why would you want to have gone there? What are you talking about?" And I realized we were talking to a veteran. We were talking to a man that loved his country, and it kind of hit me, and I was like, wow, I hope I didn't offend him. And he was genuinely curious. He truly wanted to know, why is it that we wanted to go there? What is it that we wanted to do? And he wanted to learn about the people. He had so many questions about what we did over there and what we ate over there. And that was Fred. He was open, he was kind, he was curious, and the thing that he always would say, darling and marvelous.
Yes. Everything's marvelous, darling.
Yes, everything's marvelous, darling. So to Fred, we love you, we miss you, and it was marvelous.
Well, let me tell you the connection between Max and Fred. My father, Harry Schoenfeld, was the eldest of 4 children. His second sister was Judy, Fred's mother. We lived 3 blocks apart, and we went to the same grade school, PS 241 in Brooklyn, and we both went to Erasmus High School. But he's older than I am. He was 7 years older. He used to be my Saturday babysitter, and he would take me roller skating and ice skating, anything he could do to shut me up and keep me interested. Fred always had the most friends, the most girlfriends, the most everybody chasing after him. He was always charming and gorgeous with this great sense of who he was. So Fred and my dad were very close because they were very, very much alike. And when Max went to school at Roosevelt, what year did you come here?
2007.
2007. He left Florida and went to college here. And of course he knew Fred because we used to spend a lot of time together once they moved to the Midwest, because I was living in the Midwest then. And Max and Fred meet each other, and the first thing Fred says, "Oh my God, it's Harry." And he adored my father. So this connection was the larger-than-life people, Harry, Fred, and Max. And he would call me up every time he saw Max. Also, Max was so good to him during the COVID crisis. He would call me up and say, "Your grandson, he's just the best." So I love Fred dearly. I looked up to him. I miss him terribly. And let me tell you, it was a great, great experience having him as my older cousin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here.
It was a tough act to follow. I suggest you guys make yourself comfortable. It's Frederick Michael Skeer, October 24th, 1928 to May 8th, 2023. Frederick Michael Skeer was my father and friend, my confidant and consoler, my provider and protector, and it turns out responsible for my hubris and my lousy sense of humor. My father, as we are all, was influenced and shaped by the attitudes, morals, and mores of his generation, a combination of his family's pedigree, lived life experiences, innate personality, his friends and acquaintances, world events, and the generation into which he was born. His job as father in his early years, as simply defined in black and white terms, in the way he often known to perceive his world, it was as the breadwinner of the family to economically and happily provide for the needs, wants, desires, and whims of his wife, Barbara Joan Hirsch, whose job, in simple, easy terms, as the mother and wife, was to take care of and raise the kids, and by extension to satisfy the needs, wants, desires, and whims of the children. So you'll see we're going to have more of a son's perspective. As a second-generation American whose grandparents arrived to the United States at the turn of the century, being of the lucky ones to escape imminent atrocities and the trauma caused by his direct ancestors, and by extension, my surviving family, Fred, like his father, Dr. Jacob Skeer, before him, proudly served his country in the United States military. Fred as a second lieutenant in the Armor Division during the Korean War, and Jacob as an officer of the Navy during World War I. Jack, as Jake or Jacob was known to be called, came from a religious Orthodox Jewish family where it was given that you would certainly be a bar mitzvah. Viewed by some to be strict as a father, a product of his times and upbringing, Jake was known as well to have a lighter vaudevillian theatrical side with hat and cane and soft shoe complete. It's likely on some level that this is how Fred's father and mother, Judy Schoenfeld Skeer, grew fond of each other, as she was a flapper, a radio pianist musician, and the girl who got accepted to be schooled in the culinary arts at the Sorbonne in Paris, France, though her strict father would not allow her, such a young daughter, girl, woman, to be unsafe and on her own in a strange country. It's from his parents, his extended family, and the friends with whom he fraternized that I believe account in great measure for much of what Fred Skeer is known and admired for most. Fred's charm, his ability to light up a room, his gregarious nature, his genuine, deep, caring, loving, engaging manner, and of course, his sometimes dark, sometimes dirty, sometimes inappropriate, sometimes punny, sometimes ironic, sometimes sarcastic, sometimes deprecating, and sometimes, even as a son, funny, yet unintentionally hurtful sense of humor. Poor me. Humor born of the Jewish tradition, of finding the humor in everyday life, even in the worst of circumstances. As he was known to say, they cannot be all as perfect as me. After skipping in a line at a museum, he made sure as his dutiful and responsible father to advise me regarding the action he'd just taken by teaching me well. Lie, cheat, that's okay, but don't steal. You should never steal. While continuing to act poorly, laughing or swearing with friends in front of his friends' children and me, he would say, "Shh, the Kinder, the Kinder." I'd be remiss if I didn't, for my father's sake, mention the names of my father's dear lifetime friends. They could not make it here today, simply because my father outlived most of them all. To the well-lived age of 94 years, 6 months, and 2 weeks, which was unfortunately 6 months short of his goal to exceed his mother Judy's lifespan of 95 years. And we would not be here today, literally, if it was not for his dear friends. Fred's lifelong Erasmus high school friend, Joe Katz, who ended up marrying his high school sweetheart, Lita Katz, introduced Fred and Lita to your high school friend, Barbara Joan Hirsch, who ended up being Fred's wife and my mother. Joe Katz, as much as he would be capably insist and engender my father's humor, full of stories to tell us here, and as much as my Fred would desperately invite him to do so, Joe Katz will unfortunately not be presenting Fred's eulogy today. Instead, there's a poor understudy in his place, though I'm sure that all of his friends are here in spirit today. Lou and Ruth Cravette, Joan Brement, and Joan Aronson Wolf, who later married Arnold Wolf, who became his buddy, were all part of a core of Erasmus High School friends from Brooklyn, New York, who gathered throughout their lifetime to laugh and share their lives and families together. All sons and daughters of recent immigrants to the United States, they all were motivated to improve their family's lot in life and went on to live accomplished and admirable lives, attending colleges for advancement, working for major well-known corporations and starting businesses of their own. Over the last 20 years, Fred was fortunate to share his joy, life, and times with Carol Vincente, who along with his cousin Max Fabian and Max's wife Casey brought Fred much happiness, camaraderie, laughter, and support. And of course, there was the relationship between Susan Skeer, who just expressed what it meant to have him in her life. And of course, the rest of the family for their support. He also was fortunate to share his good humor and ease of being, which included funny email threads and community building, with those friends and neighbors who have come here today to honor his life. Whether it was his contribution to Emmanuel Congregation, the improvement of Osterman Beach outside our doors, as part of the Beach Point Condominium Association, or as president of the Midwest Society for Consultants, he employed his gregarious nature and his business abilities to help facilitate positive change for his community. He was touched by you all, and I thank you for that. Having the military experience that he gained as Army lieutenant and business experience through training at the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business, and by working in sales and marketing, Fred often also applied these skills to what is now known as the profession of domestic engineering, more commonly known as fatherhood, or fathering, or simply bossing the kids around. Fred had a compulsion, propensity, and a talent to problem solve and plan events and trips, sometimes down to the hour. Feeling anxious or uneasy sometimes if he wasn't sure ahead of time where he planned to be, when, and doing what. Travel anxiety was not uncommon for Fred, as it was not uncommon for and was dutifully passed down by his mother, Judy, who would be sitting by the front door for hours before it was time to leave with the bags packed. Fred and his mother, Judy, anxiety born of desire to be early and on time to events. His father, Jake's, and my travel anxiety born more for the dire desire to arrive just in the nick of time. Judy reflected to me once that I reminded her of Jake, who was known to jump onto a leaving ship just as the gangplank was being removed for travel. Now that's my kind of impromptu seat of your pants on time. My boys, Benjamin and Zachary, have had the wonderful experience of witnessing their perfectly capable but tired and stressed father trying to get out the details of his traveling life together for events such as today's and running late. In contrast to Jake and me, Benjamin takes on Fred and Judy's respect for schedules, where being prompt is being late, and on time is being 10 minutes early. As time marches on, I continue to learn and how to improve for my children. When Fred moved to Edina, Minnesota, a suburb of Minneapolis, for one of his many marketing jobs, my mother suggested an impromptu, spontaneous, unplanned trip to the South Dakota and Badlands. We planned the trip as we went along, which was my style indeed. We all saw Mount Rushmore and then decided we would each have a say to do one thing we were interested in having us all do together. Jeff decided we should see Devil's Peak before the movie Close Encounters was even conceived of or made, thereby proving that Jeff, of course, was indeed an alien, and that was his day and wish fulfilled. I chose a full day of fishing, and when we arrived at the destination, we discovered a tourist trap of stocked fish pools, where fish were caught in a matter of seconds, not days, then gutted, cooked, and served within minutes. That was my day. Fred, being a military buff, decided he wanted to spend a day seeing Custer's Last Stand. The park ranger informed us when we arrived that the site did indeed exist. It was just down there a bit, over in the next state, only about 300 miles to the west in Wyoming. Having put all of his military and business acumen aside, leaving it behind for his family, that was a trip where he glanced at the local paper to see how his speculative stocks were doing, and arrived at the conclusion that the local paper got it wrong and misprinted the stock quote. When we returned home, he did indeed confirm that the stock did actually plummet during our short impromptu vacation. That's the last and only unplanned trip I ever recall going on with Fred. Fred was a go-getter, moving the family in pursuit of good life in marketing and sales from Plainview, Long Island to Freeport, Illinois, to Edina, Minnesota, to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and then later to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and ultimately to Chicago, Illinois. Black and white brevity was also a hallmark of Fred's demeanor. I think it was rare when you didn't know exactly what he was thinking, for better or for worse, and perhaps to a fault. The word unfiltered sometimes comes to mind. As the businessman, and I say I'm my father's son, and As a businessman, he was always interested in the pragmatic, solution-based bottom line and getting to the point in short order, without taking the expressive, nuanced, detailed, and descriptive scenic route to the desired destination most frequented by my mother and me. If Fred's way of being was informed by a Depression era in his life and family experience, mine was defined by the life experiences in the 60s and 70s, as Fred's grandsons, Benjamin and Zachary's lives will be defined by their times. It's my hope that the best of our family values and life experiences will be passed on to our family and descendants through our children. Fred loved me unconditionally and always did his best through whatever may come to make that intent known to me, regardless of how adverse or heated his father and son relationship with me may at times have become. The unconditional love and his expression of it, always present to carry the day, somehow always oddly comforted and assured that a short fuse, quick to ignite, with confident self-pride and desire to win the argument at any cost by saying almost anything, would always result in a quick resolution. Through the realization of the circumstance, reflection of what's important, with a quick apology and unconditional love. Others who may have encountered such a sequence of events from the outside, going from adversity to love so quickly, may have found it unfathomable. But I ultimately understood the unconditional love, as confusing as it may sometimes have been. Fred also very deeply loved his grandchildren, Benjamin and Zachary, forever asking about them and what they were like and doing, and sending his love to them directly and through me. Although in confidence to me on infrequent occasions, he sometimes lamented that perhaps he was not skilled or experienced enough to effectively communicate with them in a meaningful way, or perhaps too old to do so and of a different generation in order for them to understand or relate to him, or perhaps him to them. But the key to it all was in the engaging, the spark, the shining, the intent, the attempts, the candor, the humor, and the unconditional love. The concept and practice of fatherhood has progressed over the last 94 years, 6 months, and 2 weeks. That's a lifespan of nearly a century. That's 100 years, in case you didn't know. As a perceptive child of psychosocial dynamics myself, I only wrote and presented a several-page, I once wrote and presented a several-page dossier with an accuracy stamp approval given by my mother, Barbara, which Fred took under advisement and consideration in order to process for immediate action. But in short, old ways and habits have a way of taking hold and then dominating the landscape once again, which fell more in line with his fatherly attitude that his son was not the teacher and that he was not the student. How times have changed, as I find that my children, less tarnished, more innocent, and more accurate perceptions of me and my brother, and my behavior, our relationship and our communication inform me on a daily basis, and how I can be a better person, a better father, and parent to my 2 boys, Benjamin and Zachary. Interesting that I said brother. I guess I'm thinking of him today as well. As sons and fathers are wont to do throughout my life, efforts to be understood and appreciated, to discuss the complexities of our relationship with Fred in psychosocial terms, naturally eluded him, as this was not Fred's natural proclivity. Relationships for Fred were a much simpler entity than their innate complexity. But Fred understood the basics, the shorthand for what really mattered, and lived them well. As generations pass, we hope to pass on increased generational understanding, along with opportunity, wisdom, and prosperity. As reticent to change as Fred professed to be, Fred's concept and practice of fatherhood evolved and progressed over the years, and he did everything within his ability to fill the void left by the untimely passing of his wife and my mother, Barbara, and I'm grateful for his intent and tenacity. Or, as Mark Twain stated, perhaps it was just a case, in fact, that the older I got, the smarter my father became. We, as fathers, are never formally prepared or educated on how best to navigate this awesome joy and responsibility, and are only able to do so the best we know how, to learn on the job and make adjustments. As children, we on some level always seek parental and family approval, and hopefully gain at least some of it. As adults, our children will always be our children, regardless of their age, and sometimes those old patterns can die hard. In the end, I'm lucky to have had a loving, caring father that took care of all of my many basic needs throughout his long lifetime, and I'm lucky and grateful for his life and the time I had the honor of enjoying with him. I'm forever and deeply grateful, especially for his unwavering devotion and unconditional love. I'm glad and grateful that Fred had the camaraderie, companionship, company, love, friendships, and relationships with those who have gathered here to memorialize his life today. That he got to know you, and that all of you got to know my father in your own special way. The beginning of his last days in many ways began amongst this congregation, who were literally here to lift him up and support him on the eve of Rosh Hashanah last. For that, I thank you all. Over the last year or so, after 63 years of being looked after and cared for by my father, I had the opportunity to return the favor of his generosity of heart, looking after his day-to-day care, medical needs, and administrative duties, which put me in a different light in his aging eyes as the caring and loving person he taught me to be. I finally took care of him, not him of me. And no doubt I had a lot of help in doing so. I often found it more fulfilling and easier to take care of my father's needs during the last year than it was perhaps to take care of my own. And he was grateful and thankful for it, and expressed this many times to me in the last year in no uncertain terms. A son's life somehow validated in the eyes of his aging father. I think he was generally both impressed and unaware of some of the abilities he either didn't know I possessed or never had previously noticed, and consequently, therefore, unable to acknowledge until recently. Throughout his lifetime, but especially in the last year, though separated by physical distance while long-distance quarterbacking, we had the opportunity to learn even more about each other, to teach each other about ourselves, to learn from each other's lived life and shared experience, even though, of course, I wasn't the teacher and he wasn't the student. Sports, politics, news were not just small talk, but a way of connecting between people of all ilk for Fred. Some of these discussions waned in more recent months between him and I, as he watched less television and did less reading due to his worsening eyesight. As human beings, it can be easy not to realize in real time, in the present, what you have. It's important to be grateful for what you have, the good in your life, who you have in your life, without being judgmental or taking life or those in it for granted. To be grateful for the good life you do have and have been afforded, and to live it with unconditional love. Fred, through his actions and his natural way of being with friends and strangers alike, did his best to exude love and camaraderie. And to his family, he gave unconditional love and support. Fred, through his actions and his natural way of being, taught me to focus on some of the things that mattered most in life and relationships: love, good humor, understanding, camaraderie, and compassion. I do my best to pass on this experience and my experience to my children and the people I encounter in my life. To be grateful. Of course, nobody's as perfect as I am, but is what he would say. My way of saying, we try to achieve that, but don't always reach our mark as best as we'd like. But to be grateful for the good things we do have and have been afforded without taking it for granted, to try and fail, and to get up, do, and be the best you're able at everything you do. Death is part of life, but still somehow always unexpected. This is why it is important, I believe, to express love while in the midst of those we hold dear. I would like to take a moment to recite a poem, which I read at my mother's barber, Joan Hirsch's passing in her eulogy. I believe this poem to be known to more people than it was when I first read it in 2001. My mother's eulogy, you'll be glad to know also, waxed poetic and droned on and on. A eulogy, to my family's dismay, also lacked brevity to fit well-planned program schedule, usurping valuable time. And also again, on and on, more recently at my brother Jeffrey Eric's untimely funeral eulogy, only 4 short years ago in 2019. For this I apologize. We don't get many occasions to say goodbye like this. My farewell to and remembrance of my father, Frederick Michael Skeer, is called The Dash by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at a funeral of a friend. He referred to as dates on a tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that the first came the date of birth and spoke of the following date with tears, but he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For the dash represents all the time they spent alive on earth, and now only those who loved them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that still can be rearranged. To be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So, when your eulogy is being read and your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you lived your dash? Frederick Michael Skeer, my father, my friend, my confidant, my consoler, my provider, my protector, may you rest in peace. You've lived a full and wonderful life. We shall remember you always. And Fred, I say to you one more time, I love you. Thanks for your patience.
Finally, and through the gift of technology, thank you so much to Chicago Jewish Funerals, who it was an absolute. Can I say one thing? Oh, sure, of course.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say that Fred had good traits, bad traits, flaws like we all do, but he was disciplined. He was a manager of some folks, and he wanted to quit smoking, so he quit himself, and he got all his employees to quit smoking, and he never smoked again. And that was impressive. And as you know, he was also funny. I'm sure you all have a good story of how he made you laugh. I found a newspaper clipping this morning with a old guy with a political sign coming to the curb, and it says, "My way is the only right way." So thank you all for coming, and it's clear that he was popular and had many friends from everything I've heard. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your words. As I was saying, Chicago Jewish Funerals has pulled an amazing, I don't even know how they made this work, but thank you to them for the equipment and all of this. Through this gift from them, we are going to be able to see our emeritus rabbi, Rabbi Michael Zedek, give a few words as well.
We've already heard much, and even so, not enough. For there is an element of mystery, an aspect that remains always hidden about every human being. And while I have no doubt that description includes Fred, what we at Emmanuel experience was always, an individual of utmost integrity, and even more so, a true throwback to a time when the term gentleman carried remarkable meaning and exceptional value. For he was invariably a gentleman, a person with a certain nobility of interest in all, and above all, a person of fine, even awesome character. So yes, he was a gentleman, and at Emmanuel, we especially appreciated that he was a gentle man, someone with whom any encounter would be desired, and invariably one from which you felt enriched in spirit. All of that and more was certainly true for all of us. How much the more so, as you have in fact heard, for family, for Carol, for so many others who preceded him through this valley of shadows. For the simplest and joyful truth, the bottom line, is that we were more because Fred Skeer was part of our lives. And we are more because that is still true. Alas and always, it is not the way we want, but it is just the way it is. And the way it is means Zichrono Livracha. His memory, just as his life, will become a source of inspiration and blessing. With that in mind, the final word from me. Shalom, friend. Peace, peace, peace.
I invite you to rise physically or spiritually for the El Malei Rachamim, our memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim, Shochin Bamramim, Hamsem Duchan Chanat Hachat, Kanfei Chashchina, Im Kedoshim Utorim, Kezohar Rakiyam Azirin, and Ishmar Chavereinu, Shechalach L'Olamo, Harachamim, Yasirehu B'Seiter Kanafav L'Olamim, B'Dzrar, Hachayim et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, V'yanuach B'Shalom, B'Shalom al Mishkavo, V'nomar Amen. The outer of your packet, Kaddish Yatom. May the love and eternal connection of our souls give us strength as we turn to recite the words hallowed by time, Sanctifying the name of God, we honor the memory of Fred Skeer, with the words of Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'amlich malchutei, b'chayachon uvyomachon uvchaye d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach leolam u'amei almaya. יתברך וישתבח ויפאר וירומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום ממרמיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו, Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all of you who are bereaved among us. Let us all say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, we're going to have a montage. Memorial contributions to Emmanuel Congregation would be appreciated. That information is on the service folder. Following the montage, everyone is invited to a reception here just outside of this door to your left. So at this time, we're going to dim the lights, and please enjoy this montage. I'd like to thank Max for that, so give him a round of applause, why not, you know? The services are now concluded. Just give me a moment, we'll turn on the lights, and everyone can just go through this opening and to your left. Thank you for coming. It was great for you to honor the memory of Fred Skeer.